You look fine. What's wrong with you?
Biggest misconception by far. People think you're fine just because you don't look sick.
You could look perfectly fine, but behind that there is so much going on in your head.
Diagnosed with anorexia nervosa at 17.
Anorexia for me was pretty much starvation to the point of nearly dying.
You just want to get down as skinny as you can, not eat.
Emaciated.
Yeah, emaciated, yeah.
It was calorie counting, cutting back as much as possible, hiding food, pretending that I've eaten.
And you're in denial the entire time. You don't think that you've got a problem.
When I had anorexia and I was severely underweight and someone said, "Oh, you look really good," the eating disorder would be like, "Yes, you're doing really well, you've lost so much weight," and people think it looks good on you.
I think there's a perpetuating stereotype of eating disorders where it's all just one, which is anorexia. It's all anorexia.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing else.
For me personally, so I've got a combination of anorexia and binge eating disorder. So I'll just eat and eat and eat and eat until I reach a point where I'm so disgusted with myself that I'll starve again. So I never expel my food, I just stop eating.
Isn't it a spoiled rich girl's problem?
Fucking hell, alright.
And it does happen to anyone. Boys, girls, rich, poor.
There is still this really strongly held belief that it is purely like a socio-cultural illness, but I don't think that just alone is enough for a person to develop an eating disorder.
For me, it started at 15. I mean, it's genetic in my family. My auntie had the exact same anorexia combined with binge eating.
My mum had one, my sister had one, my auntie had one.
There's a lot of addiction in my family that plays out in other ways, but for me, I took the eating part.
15, 16, all the girls I went to school with, you know, oh, got to lose a bit of weight, you know, diet. And I thought, oh, I better lose a bit of weight, you know, too, da-da-da-da. So it all just like became a mountain that I couldn't get down.
I remember the exact moment it started so vividly. We were a couple of weeks away from going to Bali. My sister was on the floor doing sit-ups and I was on the couch eating a big bowl of spaghetti, and she said, "I want a flat stomach for Bali." I looked down and that was it. I was like, I need a flat stomach. I need to lose weight.
Trigger off until I was about 16, 17. But when I hit 16, 17, it's like that landmine went off when I started getting really stressed about my final years of school.
I was really stressed. I think I put that pressure almost entirely on myself to be involved in everything and achieving everything.
For me, it's very much been about perfectionism, like very much. So if my job isn't successful enough, I'll start to panic that I'm not achieving. And for some reason, I've associated being very thin with being very perfect.
That was my control. If I couldn't be good at everything, I could be good at this one thing.
Like, if I can control what I eat for lunch, then I can deal with all the other stuff in the world because I've got control over this small part of my life and no one else can take control over it. But ultimately, that style of thinking is not helpful.
Be eating maybe 3 times a day, tiny meals, restricting to the bare minimum. Everything was measured, and in between those tiny meals I would be exercising in secret.
Anything that you put into your mouth, you'd freak out. You go, oh, I gotta exercise. You jump on the exercise bike for an hour and a half.
I would weigh myself every single morning and I wouldn't have a sip of water before I'd weigh myself.
I used to have days where I'd get on those scales and look at that weight and look at that number and think, you can't eat today until you're under a certain amount.
Well, I wouldn't weigh myself wearing a hairband because I was worried that the hairband would make me weigh more. So that's a bit ridiculous.
That's a good one.
I have severe anxiety. My anxiety targeted itself towards my food.
My biggest belief personally is that it's anxiety related, and anxiety is crippling.
You can't really understand that kind of fear and terror until you're living it yourself. I was obsessed with this food that almost was like forbidden to me in my own mind. So I would sit there and watch hours and hours of the cooking channel, but then I'd be like, I can't eat that, that would make me sick. But I enjoyed watching other people eat it.
It's not like you have a real disease like cancer. Why couldn't you just eat a fucking sandwich or two?
Annoys me. People say to people who have mental health issues, like, just get better, like, just do it. Why don't you just wake up and think positive today? Okay, I should have thought of that sooner. I wouldn't have wasted the last 5 years of my life.
It's real. It's a real disorder that absolutely rips apart your life.
It's an illness that just gets ignored until it becomes a serious problem.
For me, it was uncontrollable.
That fear you feel when you see a snake in front of you, that's what I felt every meal of the day.
And so when my family's like, hey, try this banana, I was like, are you trying to kill me?
It's like I'm being attacked. You're giving me this food to attack me.
It is a mental illness, okay? It's caused by your head playing games with itself because you've got this devil on your shoulder and it's in your head the whole time.
Right at the back of your head, just constantly like chattering away.
Yeah.
Talking, there's two voices in my head. You've got to eat. And this one's going, no, you can get away with it one meal, you know, you'll be right.
Oh, you successfully exercised without anyone knowing.
Someone's looking, you've got to be better, you've got to be better, got to be better.
Everything that you're fearful of, not being accepted by your family, not being accepted by your friends, not being loved, being an outcast, that's all going to come back if you don't get rid of this kilo.
They're not your friend. An eating disorder is not
But
your
it
friend.
feels like your friend.
Feels like your BFF, I tell you it does.
It feels like your friend. It feels like the only thing that is ever going to understand you.
If you do what it says, it will celebrate and it will reward you with like peace of mind. But if you don't do what it says, it will torture you.
And the mental torment is excruciating.
It feels like you're in a prison of your own mind.
So much of my life was lying. I did so many insane things to try to be normal.
Eating disorders absolutely thrive on secrecy.
I consider this illness like it's very manipulative. You're lying to protect yourself.
I had all these excuses where I'd joke about being on a diet, I would say I'm a vegetarian, I would say I'm lactose intolerant, just to prevent people from trying to give it to me, because any excuse I can have to protect myself, I would be using.
My partner would come home and say, oh, what'd you have for dinner tonight? And I'll say, oh, I made sausages and mashed potato and broccoli, and really I ate a piece of tofu.
I couldn't keep my feet, I was collapsing a lot, got a lot of bruises, started losing hair.
I may not be able to have children.
I went for like states where I didn't get my period for like months at a time.
Well, of course, I stopped menstruating 13 and a half years ago.
I never kind of had that stage going through puberty because I was so malnourished.
If I can regret anything about developing this eating disorder, it's the fact that I was never able to have kids. Part of it is that I have severe osteoporosis, like my calcium was so low, and your body will leach calcium from wherever it can.
When your body doesn't have anything else to break down, it will attack your organs. Anything it can get nutrients from, just to try and keep you alive for as long as possible.
2 people that I met in hospital died from heart failure, where eventually they just became so malnourished that the body was actually eating the heart muscle, went to bed, never woke up.
That visceral fat around your organs is really vital, and you're in this like constant state of ketosis, so you're just burning fat and it comes out in your breath. It just smells like fermenting. You're basically cooking.
I now have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Say that 5 times fast. It pretty much means I have chronically low blood pressure, brain fog, fainting. I had to leave school. Fatigue is insane.
I would often feel tired all the time. I was iron deficient.
After this interview, I will be bedridden for a few days, yeah.